rock of Mars. It's called the rock of Mars, Ares in Greek, Mars, the god of war. Because they say that one day he was tried for a crime he had committed right here. That is, he had killed the son of Poseidon, and all the gods gathered here. Mars was there, and there was a trial. Later on, there was another famous trial in mythology. Do you remember what happened to Agamemnon, the leader of the Achaeans, when they were fighting the Trojans? When he came back to Mycenae, his city, he was murdered in his bathtub by his own wife and his cousin, who in the meantime had become lovers, and they wanted to take his place. So what happened is that his one son, Orestes, it was his duty to avenge his death. So he had to do that by killing his own mother and his own uncle. So he started being chased by the Erinyes, who were demonic figures with claws, teeth, etc. Basically, for the Greeks, that was a personification of remorse. No matter where he went, they were always after him. And at some point, there was a trial right here again, and the gods decided he was not guilty, or if you like, he had paid enough with his remorse, because in the end, that was a son's duty to avenge his father. So we have these two famous mythological trials. Now, in historical times, we know that in this rock here, we had the aristocrats gathering, and that's where they had their councils. The aristocrats before the democracy was established in the city, when they run the city. Later on, at the time when democracy was flourishing, when these things were being built or were already completed, we know that this specific rock was used as a gathering place for tribunals that specifically dealt with cases of capital punishment or crimes against religion. So we never had a building built on top. You'll go up there and you'll see that it's all kind of rugged. Back in those days, the whole thing was flat. It was paved. But it had two seats, either carved or built there. It was the seat of the accuser and the seat of the accused one. And most probably the other people, or the jury if you like, were standing around like this. It's been proposed by some archaeologists that maybe what they wanted was the participation of the gods, that's why they never built anything on top. It's like, you're right here. The truth is that as a place, it may not be as tall as the Acropolis, but it still happens to be the tallest point of the Agora of Athens. So if you like, it's another high place. You can always expect to find a relation, something related to the gods up there. Now, when Paul was here, this was not used as a tribunal anymore. When Paul was here, we know that the Mars Hill meant two different things. It's the council of the people, the council of the Mars Hill, which is a council that convenes down in the building in the Agora, and it's also this place. So it's the people and also a geographical location within the city. That's why sometimes you may find some scholars saying that Paul was never here, but it was actually in a building down in the Agora. They related to the fact that Paul was bringing new ideas, strange ideas, and these people had to deal with the religious issues. Personally, I believe it's the place here and not that. The way it's phrased leads me to that in the book of Acts. Another thing is that that council of the Mars Hill by that time was not dealing with these things anymore. And to me the most interesting, but it's a personal view now, the most compelling argument is that Paul started his speech with his words, men of Athens. He's neither judges nor councilors of Athens. The thing is that during this trip, tomorrow, and especially those of you who follow to northern Greece, we will see in the book of Acts that the names, the titles, and the ranks of people given are very detailed. They are accurate to the point. Because starting from the 19th century, the book of Acts was heavily attacked by people who said that it was written by some mysterious writer, maybe many years later, maybe it's a collection of different things, maybe it's these things never happened for real. It's like things that came out of the blue. Now, after the archaeological excavation, especially of the late 20th century, archaeologists who don't believe, they have to admit that the book of Acts is one of the most accurate sources of the first century. Because there's little details that we often do not pay much attention, and they're extremely important for the archaeologists, because they prove one thing. To know something idiomatic of an area, you had to be a witness to know that. You cannot have invented it later. Because time and again in the book of Acts we had at least, I'm following most degrees, you have the stone speaking. That's why I'm saying that men of Athens kind of interest. Paul was brought here. How much time did he have? You remember the limits of the 6 minutes we talked about. We do not know what was practiced back then, but we know that it was well established practice to have a certain amount of time. You cannot go on forever. People hated babblers. So the way that Paul speaks to the people, if you measure, is no more than 2, maybe 2.5 minutes, because basically he made an introduction. And when he reached the main point, he was interrupted. Now, some people scorned him, some people said, we'd like to hear again on the matter, and he was dismissed. Now, that's not practice you'll find in a courtroom, especially the scorns, etc. Because we read that he was brought here by 2 different groups of people, mostly, the Stoics and the Epicureans, which are quite interesting figures in antiquity, because the Epicureans were, sometimes we mistakenly think they were too prone to carnal pleasures, like a person that's going to be sexually immoral, given to food, drink, etc. That's not what Epicurus said. Epicurus, that's an interesting coincidence, means helper in Greek. He's a philosopher who had a very frail health. So he invented a school of philosophy, and he was trying to eliminate human suffering. It was extremely popular. I would say the Epicureans are probably the most popular of them all, but he had left one thing out of the equation: God. He did not believe in God. He did not believe in the existence of God. Now, that was something, however, he could have not expressed publicly, because then you mess with official religion. So basically what they were saying, the Epicureans, was, yes, there is God, he created the world, and that's it, he never cared again. But what they were trying to do was to minimize suffering, maximize pleasure, kind of make it easier for people. Now the Stoics, on the other hand, did not care about making it easier. That's why today Stoic is a synonym of somebody can put up with a lot, especially suffering. They had a mindset in which was like, do not be over jubilant when good things happen, because when the wheel turns and you're going to be down, you don't want to be super depressed when bad things happen. So basically, do not give much to your emotions, etc. Trying to find a balance, trying to be self-sufficient, emotional, these things. The interesting thing, they use the word logos to describe the divinity that basically it's around us. And these people did believe in the immortality of the soul, but they were not exactly sure what happened after you died. Now, the Epicureans did not believe that at all. Sometimes they reminded a bit of the Sadducees and Pharisees on this matter, because the typical thing that would happen in a Greek gathering, a Greek meeting, is to have these 2 people quarreling like cats and dogs, like the cat and the dog. It is usually the attack started by the Epicurean. The Epicurean would go to the Stoic and say, you know something, you are a hypocrite. You say these things do not touch you. I accept my frail human nature. But anyways, it's very, very interesting that we have these 2 people here, because at the end we have these words. Some of them scorned him, and some of them said, we would like to hear again on this subject. Many scholars believe that the scornful ones were the Epicureans. All these things are rubbish to them. Those who were reminded of things like the immortality of the soul, etc., were probably the Stoics. Now over there is this bronze plaque, which is the text of the speech of Paul. I have with me the New International Version, but in case there is a clarification, needs to be a clarification, I have the critical text with me. It's going to read what happened when